welcome to our final session.
We're all going to talk one at a time anyway, right?
Yay. And what we're going to do right now is just basically pass the mic back and forth among the track chairs, talk about the things that they've learned throughout the course of this 14-day conference. What has it been? I don't know. So we're going to start with Ron Levine and then just kind of work our way down the table. So if we could hand the mic to Ron.
Let's see. One thing that came up again and again was LinkedIn and some of the other uses of it besides just resumes, the new kind of resumes. A lot of people are finding speakers for events through LinkedIn, and I thought that was interesting.
We've talked about, in my track, Evergreen Marketing Strategies, we just talked about longevity and keeping that in mind with all of your products, with all of your promotions, all of your marketing efforts. And a huge thing we talked about with Andy yesterday was Andy Swindler. You in the room? Is he in the room? Is just looking for keywords that, maybe not paying so much attention to those sexy keywords, but also paying attention to those, but also looking at keywords that are going to be long-term, going to be relevant long-term. I guess we're just passing the mic down.
Sure. For marketing diverse revenue models, one of the common themes was that I kept hearing was about nimbleness and agility, and not only in terms of thinking about technology, but just in general. And one of the examples that jumped out was actually in one of the sessions that Matt Brown put on. He talked about this transition in terms of directory marketing from going with the stodgy print product and to a much more digital type product and a lot of components, but in terms of actually marketing it, getting away from the carpet bombing direct mail and really getting into much more guerrilla marketing. And what I appreciated was Matt actually shared some of that with us and brought show and tell things, which actually I'm going to pass around here because it's really worthwhile to see. He put them out on the tables and people kept coming around for the remainder of the sessions and picking them up. But he passes out business cards that say things like, "Trust us, we're professionals," on the back. There's one with a picture of a devil cartoon and it says vendor on there. There's one with a sort of a space suit guy that says, "I have unusual ideas," for business cards. His buttons, they go to librarians as one of his key audiences, and he's got buttons that says, "Caffeinated librarian," "Your questions make me crazy," "Trust me, I went to school for this," "I love Southern librarians," "New England librarians are wicked," "highly effective." There's a lot of things there that are targeted, fun, but really make a difference and get people's attention.
For the technologies and sales and marketing track, several people talked about the metrics successful publishers depend upon, and Phil Binko mentioned there are 4 real ways to increase sales. And that's to, 1, increase the number of real opportunities that your sales team has in the pipeline. 2, shorten the length of your sales cycle. 3, increase your closing rate. And 4, increase the dollar per sale or transaction.
All right. Nancy and I co-chaired the track, so we were all taking notes in the same session, so looks like I'm not going to have much to say. Yeah. It's not a credible statement, is it? Yes, I am. Well, so there are going to be a few things, but first I want to go back to what Tom was talking about. One thing that's notable to me about these buttons, they don't have a corporate name. There's no corporate logo. There's nothing. This is a long vision view of branding being known as the guy that creates the fun buttons, rather than stick my logo on everybody's lapel, where they probably don't end up wearing a button. But the wicked New England librarians probably keep wearing that button every year at the conference, and every year they remember the brand without the logo. And that just made an impression on me that it probably has much longer term payoff because it's more subtle. So I just wanted to comment on that. So the session the first session we had in our track, we were able to get 3 unbelievably sharp longtime SIPA members, Wayne Cooper, Phil Ash, and Phil Binko, who are totally comfortable working with numbers, and the session was about data and metrics, and Nancy just mentioned the sort of 4 key metrics that Phil Binko went through in talking about sales. Just mentioned the things that Phil Ash, I mentioned 2 things. One is Wayne Cooper talked about using Salesforce and Pardot and how an amazing system of being able to go through and identify contacts and score them and that sort of thing. And we heard up here yesterday at the end of the day, the system isn't quite working yet, but at least there's a system and you can use it. He was able to identify that there was a problem and they're fixing the problem. But for those of us who are working in these niches where there's limited universe, figuring out who are the good prospects is so critically important. And Phil Ash talked about in lead generation, sort of the main metrics that are of importance is cost per acquisition, return on investment, understanding the value of your name, and your conversion rates. And they put together a great PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, I'm going on. For a guy with not much to say, I'm going on a long time, huh? Full disclosure, I am a politician, so in my other life. So anyway, I would highly recommend people get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, which, Luis, these will be on the website?
Yes, early next week we'll have them on the website.
And so I would just recommend that you get this because these are really sharp guys in our industry. These are the metrics they use. They're really good.
And I will say, working with Phil Ash and Ali Ash, if you ever want to have a really good time, have both of them, who are not only brilliant publishers, but both CPAs, tear your budget to shreds. It's an experience that cannot be duplicated.
We had a great session early this morning on your new best friend, the editorial marketing relationship. And I think one was, it just sounded like getting people in the same room. Because one was about marketers sharing their open rates with editors so that editors can see what's working, what subjects are good. Another one was research. I think Jenny, you said that you were sharing your research from Facebook with some of the editors. And then Denise also said something that sounds simple, but it was location. And I've been through that too, where editorials, and this is for bigger places, okay, but it was editorial on one floor, marketing on another. But it can even be situated throughout one floor. But again, it's if you can get people bumping into each other more, talking at the kitchen. I think everybody, it makes cooperation easier.
I think a big theme of the sessions in my track, my Evergreen Marketing track also, is that print is not dead. Obviously, a lot of us do print marketing campaigns, direct mail pieces certainly. But with our multi-channel marketing, it's really, really hard to. It's overwhelming to find the time to test something new, right? How many of you in the room, are thinking, I would love to do that, but I just don't have the time, right? We're all doing 50 million things at once. So the important thing is to take one small variable and make that testing very manageable and palatable, and you can just test even, and I talked about email marketing this morning and testing a subject line, just having 2 subject lines and testing them against each other, testing, Eleanor Jones talked about renewals and, testing the color of your envelope, little things like that make testing very, very manageable. And so that was something we've talked about all yesterday and today.
In a session yesterday on innovative ways to market data products that Guy Sakela and David Foster shared a lot of their insights. Guy shared some key things that are working here. E-blasts for products, data products that are at price points of $600 or more. News alerts around the release of data products. It really drives traffic and sales, very effective. Organizing data products on the site with separate and easy-to-find landing pages, and personal contact at a senior level for the high-level dollar products. What's not working, direct marketing mail for any data products. Special reports, it's not working. Display ads in newsletters or trade pubs. What we found actually in my business with our data products is that we've set up some really nice advertorials with trade publications and put them on a monthly program where we're feeding them data slices for the country at a high level. It's really, there's also a display ad that's incorporated with that. It's really generating excellent inbound leads for that.
So I know that a lot of publishers may not have inside sales and rely on telesales or direct marketing, but for those who are looking toward an inside sales team or already have one, 2 questions to ask when interviewing a sales manager. 1, how do you put together a forecast? And then 2, this was Phil Bingo's recommendation, go to his or her reference and ask how accurate was this person's forecast. And then also, Wayne Cooper had talked about monitoring the sales process and looking at a monthly pipeline report showing every step from lead generation to qualification and comparing that to the previous 3 to 6 months pipeline.
One thing that I thought was struck me about this conference, I remember maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at SIPA, one SIPA event, someone talked about they were looking at implementing a CRM, and everybody's kind of like, "Ooh, you're doing that." That was like 2 or 3 years ago. My sense was from the last couple of days is there's an awful lot of people in this room that have implemented Salesforce or some other CRM. That's really striking, and I think it shows a real shift. You know, we finally have moved away from being the direct mail-driven, the direct marketing-driven industry that we are, and we're really, you know, embracing sales, and that's so that was just an observation. But we had a session on integrating Salesforce.com into your daily sales routine, because that seems to be sort of the 800-pound gorilla in the CRM space. And Lexi Gross and Lisa McIntyre from BVR spoke at the session, and a couple of notes that I thought were particularly important. One is, they both commented, when you're doing this, use a data integrator. Get a professional who's done this before. Don't try to get your amateurs who already in your office who haven't done this before, who also already have day jobs, to do the implementation. There's a lot of work to be involved. There's a lot of work involved and to be done, and so that's important. And the other thing that I think is really good, and I see this, this can apply to almost any kind of technology implementation, but start simple. Salesforce, like so many of these things, there's an enormous amount of capability, and a huge number of modules. I think it was Lexi commented how much functionality is available, and you add on this module and add on that module, and first of all, every time you do that, the price keeps going up and up and up. But also you add complexity and start simple, get some successes. You can build on that later. I thought that's a really good observation.
I just wanted to mention something about the keynote on gamification. There was not actually a game mentioned during that keynote, which was kind of interesting. But one thing that I did take away from that session is the importance of engagement. Not only with your customers and your prospects, but this can also be used as an orientation and training tool for onboarding your new employees. So it may not look like Angry Birds, but there are just word games and things like that that can be used to increase engagement through your employees, through your prospects, anybody.
We had an excellent video session, thanks to Lindsay Konzak from Gale Media and Joseph Coleman from the Coleman Report. Maybe here are three of the things that jumped out at me. Joseph mentioned that if you're doing a video and say it's promoting something, conference or live event, make it content oriented. He said he's had very little success with videos that would just come on and say, come to our event. It's going to be great. But if you focus on one of the subjects from the event, that's going to be much more effective. He also mentioned that it's worth it. Him and Bob feel it's worth it to do the transcript for a video. You're going to get much better SEO, and I know from my perspective as a writer, I love it when I see transcripts, and it's gonna make me want to write about something more, because it's easier. And I think Lindsay, she had a lot of great things, but one was fairly obvious, but I don't think about it. When you're promoting it and you have the video up there to link to, don't we all love that big button that says, to play, but it's not doing that, of course, on that first email, but then it's linking to the site. And she said she's had very good success with people opening that.
Yesterday, Tom Pines, are you in the room? Tom Pines and Guy Sakala had a fantastic case study on email deliverability, and the big takeaway I found from that was that Guy Sakala found himself behind the 8 ball, so to speak. He found him, they were in some deep trouble with their deliverability, their email deliverability. And so his takeaway is that, if you find yourself behind the 8 ball, you can bounce back. And, I suggest, seeking him out or downloading his presentation. It was fantastic. And he found that sending multiple emails to smaller lists actually was way more effective. And it dropped his email cost by 50%. So I thought that was very, very interesting.
It actually just occurred to me that when Ed followed up on my comments about the guerrilla marketing and buttons, that he was much more articulate. So from now on, he'll be offering my comments from here on in. Now, actually, I had heard several of the speakers in our track mention the term native ads, and with some slightly different definitions, but advertorial, content, sponsored content. I can't get a picture out of my mind of the ads that are in our newspaper on almost a daily basis, and usually full page, of the heaters for sale that are built by Amish in Nebraska or Iowa. And you have to call, if you live in these zip codes, you can call now, but only if you live in those zip codes. So I still, particularly in terms of branding in that, I still get very nervous about the native ads, and maybe I just don't understand it well enough.
In the session, Tools for Digital Marketers, Matt Humphrey gave us a preview of 2 really cool tools that you can use at a very low cost, even free, to start with. One of them being ClickTail, which offers customer experience analytics, and a feature of ClickTail includes being able to view visitor recordings of user behavior on a particular page of your site. And another one includes heat maps and viewing conversion funnels as well. And then the second tool is Optimizely, and this just impressed, I think, everybody in that session. And you can move different parts of your website around to test, should I put this message here, this image here? Should I use icons versus text? And so it offers A/B testing for websites. So that's Optimizely and ClickTail.
So I want to talk about 2 things from one session that I thought were particularly interesting. One was called ClickTail, and one was called Optimizely. I actually do want to underscore ClickTail is really cool analytics. Optimizely, was it Matt who brought that up? Matt, are you still here? Yeah. Matt said this is the one thing you will all have looked at by the end of the day, and I actually didn't look at it by the end of the day, but I will guarantee that everybody in that room is going to check out Optimizely. And I just want to go into a little more detail because, as Tom pointed out, I can speak so eloquently. Optimizely is a thing, and you can go to it, and I had not seen it before, but it's unbelievable. You go in, you put in your URL, and so you go to your website. You can move elements on your page. You can change elements on your page and set up a test and divert a certain amount of traffic to your page and immediately do A/B testing. And it's software as a service, so you can, and there are different levels, but you can do even multivariate testing depending on how much you're willing to pay and that sort of thing. It's a phenomenal resource, and I got to say, sitting after Nancy, I obviously didn't think this through very clearly, and it's taken me back a few years to one of the first times I was on a panel like this, sort of best ideas, and I sat after, it kept rotating around, and to my left was Dr. Charles Eugster. Do people remember him, the Swiss dentist? And I learned an important lesson there. Never sit after Dr. Charles Eugster. Nothing I did came through after hearing from him. And a little footnote to that, I was online one day and I saw retired Swiss dentist, 90-year-old who's done this bodybuilding. There was an article. He lives in London now. He does bodybuilding. He's like 92 or whatever. So those of us who haven't seen Charles Eugster in a while, he's alive and well. And he, by the way, he could kick my butt.
And I think I want to play poker with you. I think that was a tell when you said, "Oh, damn, click trip." Share something at the round table on online pricing models that Brad Forrester ran. I shared something that we do. We do broader newsletters that are in the $97 to $197 a year range, and we market extensively and upsell them all the time, but we are really focusing more on upselling our webinar attendees because rather than paying us $97 a year, they're paying us $200 for an hour. So they are a more qualified prospect for a lot of our other more expensive products. And we're trying to roll out what we call our big game hunting initiative, trying to price everything higher to meet our market. So get to know your market, maybe do a demographic overlay, or I've just eyeballed some of our lists and linked them up against the list of Fortune 500 companies to see how many of the big dogs we're already hitting, and those companies are certainly candidates for upsells and site licenses. Got another round? Ed has nothing left.
Sure. All right. And if you're going to go out late at night with the crew from BVR, make sure you. All right. All right.
That's the way their sentences tend to end. Also,
now we had a. I didn't even make it to the end. So, we had a really good session on team blogging. So if anyone here isn't really doing blogging yet, it's a great way to get into it because it's going to reduce the workload rather than have one person doing it. You're having a few people sharing, maybe doing 1 or 2 posts a month, which that's not too bad. Just make sure someone's in charge of it. That's all. But I think it really showcases the different reporters, editors, marketers, people in your organization. I think it gives a little recognition to everyone, where they may be sort of quietly doing a great job reporting on the newsletter, and here's their face on this blog and a little more personal take on things. And they're also, by doing the team approach, they're writing about what they know. So you're not saying someone, go talk to so-and-so about this thing. If it's SEO, if it's analytics, if it's accounting, whatever it can be. And to tie it back to what I mentioned is probably the BVR staff again. I was talking to people with all different roles and responsibilities, and of course, their personality comes out a bit more at dinner, and okay, a couple glasses of wine. But I think that's part of the point of blogging, is to have those personalities come out that you might not even know they had these viewpoints and could be good contributors.
So the question of how soon is too soon came up in our renewals session yesterday. How soon is too soon to start hitting your customers up to renew? And actually, Eleanor at Business Management Daily was talking about how she starts her renewal series for one of her products 1 month after purchase. And, I saw some eyes kind of get wide in the room, but she sees really strong conversion rates with her efforts number 2 and 3. So I thought that was very interesting. So it's never too soon to start hitting your customers up for more money.
Bill Haight of Magna Publications shared some really nice insights in a session on new rules of marketing live events. And he started out the session by saying that when he attended a SIPA session many years ago, he came to a session on conferences and live conferences before he got into the business. And so, he jumped in with both feet, and he came back a couple years to another meeting and connected with the guy. And the guy said, "Oh, we failed miserably at that, and we got out of that business entirely." So, I'm not sure what Bill's takeaway was on that. Besides, beware of sort of jumping in with both feet. So, either that or beware of what you hear people say up on stages. I'm not sure which, but one of the really nice insights that he had was actually about apps for his conferences and how it's really become a nice tool for him. And not only that, but he's finding some really cheap basic apps that are working well. I mean, he's talking about in the $200, $300 range, not the $1,000. I mean, he's using some apps it sounds like in specific instances for more complex things, but there's some very cheap apps out there, he says he's starting to find. So it's done a lot to replace binders, handouts, and integrate a lot of the aspects of kind of the key both pre and post-conference takeaways for people.
In a session on implementing new marketing technology, it's not about the tech, Greg Kriebel spoke to getting IT and marketing on the same page, and he had a few really great suggestions that stood out. And one of them would be, see if you can get the IT department to provide marketing with a bare bones checklist so that they can develop a requirements doc, not based on what marketing wants, and then IT going back and saying, but that's actually not how you get there, and that's not really what you want. So just go ahead and make it easy and give them a bare bones checklist of where to start. And then also for marketing, bring IT in early and give them the elevator pitch so they can start thinking about the project. Ed, can you talk some more about this?
Talk more about anything.
I'm the straight guy again, man. I wanted to actually was going to talk about retargeting. Everybody familiar with retargeting? You go to Zappos, you look for shoes, and then you show up on Facebook, and there's an ad for the same shoes that you didn't buy. I experienced that. I don't know if you did. The Cosmopolitan seems to be pretty aggressive in their retargeting, because everywhere I go, I see ads for the Cosmopolitan. And I reserved my hotel room 6 weeks ago, and I'm still getting retargeted with. It's unbelievable. Greg Kriebel talked about Kiplinger did some A/B testing of retargeting, and it's important to do because as Greg pointed out, there's some number of people that would go to Zappos and look for those shoes, and then would come back later and buy those shoes without retargeting. They were doing some research, they're going away, they're talking to people, they may be looking at other things. And so there's some level that is going to come back anyway. And so they did some split testing, and so they could control against that, and they did find that it worked. It's certainly being used aggressively in the consumer space, and there are B2B people that are using it. But one idea that got kicked around in one session was, and it came back to me in the last session we were at, that you could use retargeting to encourage engagement of customers on your site, thinking about people that are selling big site licenses. I know Meg Hargraves has left, but in the last session we were talking about what she does. Nancy, I know Chartwell does the same kind of thing, where they're selling big site licenses. And Wayne Cooper in one of the sessions talked about how important it is, if you're selling a big site license, the first 30 days of getting people to use the service is critical to getting that renewal and retention. So you can use retargeting technology as another way, not just on your own site, but just reminding people when they go off to do other things that suddenly they're being reminded about the great features and functionality on your site. I love that idea. How'd I do on that?
By the way, how is everyone feeling about the Cosmopolitan? Do you enjoy the hotel here? Good.
You know what? I also want to make an offer to anybody else. If there's anybody out in the audience who would like to add something, we have a mic out here. Please feel free to raise your hand, or if not, we can always go back to Ed. But if there's something in particular that if there's something in particular you'd like to share that you heard that you thought was really good, please raise your hand, and we'll happy to have you speak a little bit more.
There you go. Something that I heard on the early session of this sales roundtable was that for those of us who haven't used Salesforce yet, it's this great big mystery full of charts and exciting leads. But something I took away from that is that you can actually use Salesforce effectively with as few as, say, 2 people. So I'll be looking more into that. I thought that was a really, really good early session. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm happy to share that one of I sat in on a session on the content marketing with Molly and Chris Maffa, and Molly Lindblom and Chris Maffa. And Molly talked a lot. They did a really nice job of bringing content marketing back to traditional marketing principles and really talking about the purpose of content marketing being to push prospects through the pipeline, and thinking of it that way as part of your overall strategy or targeting going forward. I thought they did a really nice job of bringing it back to some basic things that everybody does already. It's just using it through this new kind of technique that I thought was a great way to talk about it for publishers who have done things in a traditional way. So, anybody else?
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to go one more round. One more round.
All right. I know Luis and I both wanted to just take a quick shout out to Adam Goldstein, who's here, and Bob Coleman. I don't know, is Bob right here? I mean, oh man, they're the driving force behind all this, and they put the faith in the 5 of us up here to come up with good stuff. So I really appreciate it personally. Back in the session this morning on editorial working with marketing, I know one thing seemed obvious, but he said, Mike Greb, who was doing it, said, you're consulting with people, you're not dictating, you're creating a good air. Know your audience when it came to, of course, social media. I don't think it's a question of use this, use that. It's where's your audience? He said, with cable fax, it's higher end folks, so they're not on Facebook. They're mostly on LinkedIn or even Twitter. Well, no, he says they're not on Twitter much, so they're not doing Twitter. And then I think again he said make sure even keep count on what you're tweeting out or what you're sending on LinkedIn to make sure that it's content. And his rate was 65-35 as far on the content side and the marketing versus the marketing.
I was going to thank the track chairs, but it would seem insincere at this point. So, oh, what the hell? Please, can you give it up for the track chairs, guys? They did amazing. They did all the work, really.
I have enjoyed our weekly conference calls with a video chat, and when I saw Ed show up in his tie-dye T-shirt, I said, it's all right for me to show up in my college sweatshirt. So it's been fun, guys. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you guys so much. But also, going off of what Ron was saying about LinkedIn, and Joel drove the point home that LinkedIn is so important for us as B2B publishers and marketers. 65% of B2B marketers have gotten at least one customer from LinkedIn. I thought that was really interesting. We talked about that yesterday. Also, Facebook algorithms have changed changing in favor of B2B publishers. So that's great news for us. And also, for anyone who's overwhelmed with social media, doesn't really know how to start, recycle your content. At Reagan, we're big fans of recycling. I know a lot of publishers in the room. Any content you can recycle and get a little more usage out of, a little more mileage, do it. We talked about how to start a social media strategy by taking your existing content and just repackaging it into 140 characters.
And tagging on to the keynote, I heard several people comment about the suggestion to consider Amazon or PayPal payment options, and we're certainly going to take a look at that as an option. So I thought that was interesting. This morning, Jim Sinkinson and Donna Jefferson led a content sponsorship online advertising session, and I was really delighted that Donna was there, because between Jim and I think we're so jaded about media buyers and marketing directors at these sponsors and these companies. She brought at least a little bit of sunshine into the discussion. But one of the things that Jim said, and it really stuck with me, is that media buyers rarely know what they want, and he likened it to somebody coming into a shoe store and saying, "I'd like a pair of shoes," and you say, "What do you want?" "Well, I don't know. I'll know it when I see it." So there's a lot of education that's required. The sponsorship, whether it's webinar or banner ads, whatever it might be, is much more volatile today than it was 5 years ago. It's very difficult to get annual commitments. You're lucky to get quarterly commitments often, and people are thinking month to month. So it's become a much more complex and more competitive arena to work in. That said, it can be very attractive and be a very nice, very complementary source of revenue that works. It's worked really well for us for many years.
Well, I'd just like to say it was a pleasure working with all of you too, and including this side. And Adam and Joseph, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a great experience.
Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. Yes, Joseph via
Joseph,
Bob.
a lovely guy.
I know he had him
Proxy.
do some legwork on the back end, so thank you very much. And Kelly McCarroll with October Research during the Marketing Planning Your Foundation for Success session brought up segmentation, which I know is a topic that has garnered more interest. And while we all know that it's important to divvy your list and not mass email everybody and just send messages that aren't clearly interesting to the audience, she brought up a consequence of not segmenting, which really hit home, and that is if you don't segment, you are risking huge unsubscribe numbers and damage to your list. And that sparked the question, well then, what is the sweet spot for a number of emails per week that you can send to a recipient without having them unsubscribe? And while we don't have the data on that, we can just tell you what we do. Chartwell, we send, I'd say on average, 6 to 9 throughout the year, depending on what conferences and different products we're marketing. Kelly at October Research sends per week. Yes. Yeah, throughout the year. Yes. And Kelly sends 4 to 6 per week, and rarely sends more than or sends 2 in one day. And then Lisa McInturf with BVR, they schedule an email Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday and reserve Wednesday for special promotions or sponsored items, and that way they can have more flexibility with their marketing calendar. And then Maquota sends 8 editorial throughout the week, and then 1 weekly review, which is also considered editorial, and then 2 promotional.
Thank you, and I would just add one note to that, Nancy, that I work at a company where we work with clients that do this, so in thinking about email contact frequency, and we were also talking about ratio of editorial to marketing, what we find consistently is 2 to 1 is generally optimal, that 2 editorial efforts to 1 promotional effort tends to be what works best for clients. Just as a general rule, we actually do, our ratio is less promotional. We just have fewer products to sell, and so we get concerned about people seeing the same message, the same product being marketed over and over. So that's why we hold back. But in general, if I think most people in the room, if you've got enough product to be selling, that's a good ratio. I wanted to mention, and these were some comments and thoughts that came out of the session on tools for digital marketers with Kim Matus and Andy Swindler and Matt Humphrey, and I don't know if I don't have an attribution for these, so and some of these may have just been my interpretation, but in the session this morning I heard about some B2B publishers who are using social media but only for editorial purposes, and I understand that. I'm sure that makes a lot of sense, but I would encourage people, look at social media can and should be part of your marketing program also. It drives traffic. And I think you're selling yourself short if you only use it as a way to alert customers to products. And so I'm tying it back to the tools for digital marketers. I want to give a shout to a sponsor here today, Real Magnet. Real Magnet has the ability to tie email efforts and to track email efforts and related social efforts, and I think that's important, and that led to another thought of mine that I made note of, that there are so many things you can track, and the session, Tools for Digital Marketers, was all about the tools that we're using to be able to track all of this data and make sense of it, and for smaller organizations particularly, but anybody, there's so much data that you can track. You have to prioritize and figure out what's important. And we were talking about where do people get the biggest return, and so spending a lot of time tracking minutia on certain kinds of efforts when your email efforts are driving 82% of your sales. Well, seems to me those would be the metrics that I'd want to be spending more time on. So I thought that was a really important observation. With so much to track, you even have to kind of triage that too, and figure out where's the bang for the buck there. So.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Ed gets the last word. How cool is
Not
this?
quite.
I love
Not
this conference.
Next to last word. Again, thank you to my dream team. And to my partner in crime, Bob Coleman. It's been a delight, and Joseph will help me so much with all this. And I also do not want to forget to thank the SIA staff, who are bionic as far as I can figure out. Luis and Kathy and Ken, James. I first spoke at this conference in 1995, and then as now I am in awe of so many of you. So it's nice to be up here giving back a little bit. And there really is nothing else I can say. When they asked me to do this about a year ago, I asked Phil about this because he'd done it a few years before, and he had a one-word answer to me: sucker. For once in his life, Phil Ash was wrong. This has been great, and enjoy flying on Friday the 13th, everyone. Take care.